Well, our next topic is one that's near and dear to my heart. It's low back pain. And remember yesterday we talked about you have to know. So if you've got back pain, you have to know what flavor you have. You have to know if it's chocolate, strawberry, or vanilla. It makes a humongous difference. Humongous difference. Because the treatments are totally different. If you have discogenic back pain, which is only 4%, than if you have nerve root type back pain, or if you have spinal stenosis or facet-mediated arthritis. So it makes a huge difference, and you just have to know. Don't come telling me you have back pain. Tell me I have back pain and seems like it's due to this. Well, the one that we talked about yesterday was discogenic low back pain. And discogenic low back pain, again, it's the least common, but it's that knife in the back. Knife in the back. It's 100% in the back. The opposite pain is the nerve root pain, which is 100% in the leg most of the time. But the discogenic pain is 100% in the low back. It's in the middle. It feels like a knife in the back. What makes it worse? Bending over or sitting down. What makes it worse? Bending over or sitting down. What makes it better? Pretty much nothing. It's just kind of there all the time, which is why it just is so tedious. It drives you crazy. It's hard to sleep with it. It's just there all the time, unless, of course, you made it worse by bending over or sitting down. So it's nasty. And it's due to a tear in the outer part of the disc. This is actually kind of a fascinating medical history to this, which I'll try not to bore you with. I'm a little sensitive because of that whole math lesson yesterday on the odds ratio business, but I don't want to scare you off or bore you to death, that's for sure. I'm trying to help you live better. But there is, I don't know, sometimes it's easier to remember if you look at the history. There is a little history to this. For a long time, doctors debated whether or not discogenic low back pain even existed. And by debated, I mean fought like hell. So people really fought like hell about this. And the reason was we knew nerve root pain from the 1910s, 1920s. We knew the pain down the leg was due to herniated disc after a report by a couple guys named Mixter and Barr in the Journal of the American Medical Association, blah, 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 a long time ago, ancient history. But that was really well established. But what was not established actually until the 90s, or perhaps even the last 20 years, was the idea of discogenic low back pain. And discogenic low back pain, knife in the back pain, is a real problem for a lot of people. It's a real problem for a lot of people. It's very hard, I think, to describe or put into words annular tear, discogenic low back pain. So honestly, take a look at the screen. I really want you to just kind of blaze this in your mind and look at it and then close your eyes and try to imagine it, then look at it again and memorize it. This is a drawing of a disc, and you can see the outer part of this drawing. The artist is showing you this fibers. This is the hard outer part that is strong. And then they're showing you this inner part that looks kind of gelatinous, kind of like cold lava. Like it looks liquidy almost. Some people have described it as crab meat, which is kind of a weird and, I don't know, crab meat? I don't know. This is inside a human being. But anyway, this is the inner part of the disc, outer part that has these fibers. Now the outer part can rip. And now this one's not ripped all the way, right? It's an annular tear, but it doesn't go all the way through. If it went all the way through, and I told you this part is soft, then it would be called a herniated disc. You're right. It would be called a herniated disc, because if the soft part herniates out through the outer part, that's herniation. Like when your intestines come through your abdominal wall, that's a hernia. It's a verb, herniation. If the soft part pushes out through the fibrous part, that's a herniated disc. What would this be called? Where, okay, it's the soft part can't come out, but this has lost integrity, so it's kind of maybe bulges out. Yeah, it's called a bulging disc. So there's a bulging disc, and they're all due to these annular tears. They're all due to annular tears. So if you have a herniated disc, then you can get nerve root pain, which is often called sciatica. If you have a bulging disc, can you get nerve root pain? Kind of, maybe, but not really, not to the same degree. But you certainly can get the knife in the back, discogenic low back pain. There's a really, really smart scientist from Australia, an anatomist, Bogduck is his name, and he calls this internal disc disruption. Internal disc disruption. I think it's a great term, actually, because that's what it is. It's disruption of the internal structure of the disc, although it's kind of on the outside, so maybe not that great a terminology. But interesting, definitely interesting. And this is that knife in the back pain. And that brings us, let's go back to the screen, that brings us to the question today. Summer Dawn, you remember Summer, she was on, I was answering a question for her yesterday. Well, after watching the show, she gave some cool feedback on YouTube. She gave me a quote from her MRI report. Degenerative disc disease and spondylosis are most conspicuous at L5S1, where there is a 3 millimeter disc bulge and end plate degenerative change. No critical canal narrowing. There is mild foraminal narrowing at L5S1. This is like the radiology language that you see all the time in these reports. And it's hard, right? It's like, degenerative disc disease, spondylosis, conspicuous, 3 millimeter degenerative critical canal. It's just hard to know what the heck this means. But you got to do this. You got to follow up on this, because the MRI report is like when you were taking algebra and the answers were in the back of the book. The MRI report is the answers. You may feel a knife in the back, but if you don't have changes on your MRI that structural changes described that make sense out of those symptoms, then you don't have something that's treatable. Conversely, if you have an MRI abnormality and that locates in space and time with what you're feeling in your pain, you're in a great position to get this thing cured. So why do you care? Because you want to get out of pain. You care because you want to get out of pain. And this is the way to do it. This is actually the difference between a crap doctor and a great doctor of the spine. A crap doctor of the spine goes off on what's on the MRI, and a crap doctor has a hammer and they see a nail and they start hammering on that nail, right? I've got a tool for that problem, so I'm gonna go fix it. But if that doesn't match up to the symptoms you're having, then it's not gonna work. That good doctor listens carefully to what you have to say, forms a mental image of what you're describing goes along with this kind of a problem. And then they have the technical expertise to look on your MRI and match that up and say, you told me you have knife in the back pain. That kind of pain, and it's worse when you sit down, and it's there all the time, and it really does not go into your leg, and it's right in the middle. It feels like a knife in the back. When I hear that kind of pain, I think discogenic injury. I think discogenic low back pain. When I look on your MRI, I can see changes that indicate that is the source of your pain. Now, I go from having a theory to having a plan. Because once I know what's wrong, I can fix it, right? As the good doctor. Once I know what's wrong, I can fix it. But have you ever gone to a doctor and felt like they were a crappy doctor because they just didn't listen to you? Well, what difference does it make if they listen to you, right? Let's say they had a magic wand, and you come in and you say some stuff, and they're, oh, are you done talking? Cool, great. Bam, they'll hit you with the magic wand. It wouldn't matter what you say, right? So whether they listen to you or not wouldn't necessarily make them a bad doctor. They don't have a magic wand, right? There is no magic wand. This is not a magic wand. This is a letter opener. It's not a magic wand. So the reason you can tell someone's a bad doctor when they're not listening to you, because you know in your heart, if they're not listening to me, they're not going to understand what's wrong with me. And they may be super smart and they may know how the odds ratio is based on a continuous distribution and is an approximation to relative risk. And they may be super, super genius in some other untidy and nefarious way, but it doesn't make any difference to me because they don't know what's wrong with me. They didn't listen to me. And that's so true. That is so true. So, but also, look, you got to do your homework, right? Don't call the plumber for an electrical problem. When the lights won't turn on in your bathroom, you don't call the plumber. You call the electrician. It's no more complicated than that. So we got to understand it so that we can make sure that we communicate it to them so that they do their job right. That's how this whole show works. That's how this whole system works. All right, so Summer Dawn. Now, how do I know? So I feel that knife in the back, and then I want to go on my MRI report, and I want this thing to be in English, and it turns out it is in English. I just didn't know that kind of English. It's in a different kind of English. So here's my healthy hack tip for you today. If you think you might have discogenic low back pain, go get your MRI report and look at the impression and look for these words: end plate degenerative change. End plate degenerative change. You say, wow, I didn't see that coming. I thought you were talking about a tear in a disc. I am. So let me bring this whole thing home for you. So when you have a tear in the disc, you can see that on MRI, but it just shows up usually as one little bright dot on the disc because it's a tear and the MRI is a section, right? So it's hard to see. That tear isn't going to look like a tear like it does in the drawing. On the MRI, it's just going to be one dot. It's actually easy to miss. But if you have a tear in the MRI, if you have a tear in your disc, that means that that soft inner part, the part of your disc that has no blood supply, interesting fact that we've gone over in this show many times, interesting fact, the inner part of your disc has no blood supply, which means it's not part of your immune system, which means if your body gets exposed to it, you literally start having an autoimmune reaction to it. So the reason that that annular tear feels like a knife in your back, the reason is your body thinks there's a knife in your back, guys. Your body thinks there's a knife in your back. That tear has exposed the edges of your bone. What's next to the disc in your spine? Remember this guy? Here he's facing you. Here's a disc, here's a bone, here's a bone. These bones are called the vertebrae. And if there's a tear in that disc and now your inner part is exposed, it's going to react with the nerve root, but it's also going to react with that bone. That bone has a huge, rich blood supply. That bone is very metabolically active tissue. There's blood flowing through it at all times. What color is bone? If you look at bone in a piece of steak, if you ever get a tomahawk steak with that big old bone in it, it's red with the marrow. There's blood in bone. You better believe there's white cells in there. So when that disc rips and now that bone is exposed, what becomes inflamed? The bone. That end plate where the disc meets the bone is called the end plate right there. So if you see inflammatory changes on the MRI in the end plate of the bone, well, what's it reacting to? It's reacting to the disc. Is this too complex for you? No. I mean, like if you saw water on the ground next to a spigot, would you think maybe the spigot was leaking or on? I mean, this honestly, this is not any more complicated than that. So if you see water on the ground and you know there's a hose bib right there, would you think, hey, I wonder if that hose bib is leaking? Yeah, of course you would, because those things are super familiar to you. It's no different. It's no more complex here. You're just not familiar with it, and that's why I'm here to tell you. If there's inflammatory changes on the MRI and the end plate, that's like the water on the ground. That means the disc is ripped. That means that the bone is reacting to the disc. That means there's some leak from the hose, right? That's all that is. It's not any more complex than that. Here's what the radiologist could have said that they didn't say. hey, I've never met you, but if I did, when I saw your MRI, I was thinking to myself, hey, do you have any kind of knife in the back pain right here where this disc is on your body? Because that kind of pain goes along with what I'm seeing on your MRI. They're not going to say that to you. They say it they do say it, but they say it in a different way. And the way they say it is that there is a 3 mm disc bulge and end plate degenerative change. So what a gift that is to you. What a gift that is to you. And you don't always get that gift. I have to tell you, the reality of radiology reports is sometimes they don't mention this. They're not as tuned into this as they should be. And that's why I really invite you to call up, let me upload your MRI to our totally safe, totally secure online PACS. A PACS is an app on the web that is built for storing MRIs and keeping them confidential and secure. But then you can look at it and I can look at it and I can hear your symptoms and compare it to your MRI. And then we can really together make a decision as to whether or not you have discogenic low back pain or some other kind of low back pain.